Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Anthony Murnau. On this program, we will learn more about how the pandemic and rising prices have impacted hunger and food banks in New Mexico. Joining us is Mag Strittmatter, President and CEO of Roadrunner Food Bank. Mag, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Oh, Anthony, thank you so much for the chance to be here.
Now, your food bank is the largest food bank in the state of New Mexico. I'd like to hear from you. How urgent is the food insecurity situation in New Mexico at this time?
I would say that the issue that we're experiencing right now is as fragile as we have seen it over the last many years, especially since the pandemic began. We are seeing the instability of supply. We certainly have the demand, but because of issues surrounding the supply, it is really creating a lot of headaches and a lot of concern for all of us here at Roadrunner Food Bank.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about supply chain problems. We've talked about that in the past during this pandemic, but what's been in the news lately is rising fuel costs. I'd like to hear from you. How has that affected your organization and its mission?
Oh, it has been probably one of the biggest cost impacts that could really hurt the work that we do. We're seeing the increased unpredictability of fuel costs. We're also seeing, related to that, we're also seeing the unpredictability around freight costs. So if we are able to purchase food from out of state, we're paying, in some cases, twice as much as what we were paying pre-pandemic just to get the product to us. Say if it's a load of apples from Washington State, that freight is doubled, as have the cost for the food goods themselves. Food costs, freight, and fuel have been a three-headed monster for us right now. And it does really impact what we do, because the truth of the matter is, much like everybody sitting at home right now is paying more for all of their groceries and their gasoline, we're paying, in some cases, twice as much. So we're paying so much more and getting so much less in return. And in our work to feed people, that means who is it and where is it that we're going to be sending less food to? That's the real nightmare that we're experiencing.
So as the leader of your organization, what sort of tough decisions are you having to make with these rising costs?
We're having to be as wise and nimble as we possibly can if we're able to source product, source it early. In some cases, loads of food are taking what used to take us maybe 2 weeks to get product in is now taking upwards of 3 months. So we have to be very proactive on the sourcing and securing side. We have to be very judicious about how we're expensing our fuel dollars around routes. How are we redoing routes so that we're saving on fuel expenses? But at the same time, we never ever want to give up on the concept of getting as much food out to every community as we possibly can. So it is an ongoing day-to-day list of problem solving for all of our staff and leadership to do to make sure that we're achieving and really tackling this issue of hunger, and especially serving our mission to the best of our ability.
So have you had to say, sorry, we can't deliver food to this organization or part of the state because of these rising prices?
We're getting very close to that point. And part of what some of the problem is right now as far as having quantities of food. For example, last fiscal year, we were so blessed because we were in the midst of great flows of food coming from the federal government through a variety of different programs that they had through as a result of COVID. And those programs came to an end in many cases December of last year. like the spigot was shut off. In some cases, that's somewhere around 20 to 25 million pounds of food, which means we're having now to fill that void. So last fiscal year, we were able across the state to distribute some 60 million pounds, which is over 52 million meals to hungry New Mexicans. We're not having that luxury or that opportunity this year. We're having to scrape and really look under every opportunity to find and to access that type of food. So we know that as time goes on, and the harder it is to acquire it and the more you have to spend for it, it's going to at some point push and shove as to how we have to reallocate the product that we do have. It used to be that we would have on hand any given day in inventory pushing 4 million pounds in our warehouse. Right now, our inventory is down to 2.2 to 2.3 million. And that is of concern. I mean, it's like paddling on a river and all of a sudden you look down and you're seeing rocks. That means the water's shallow and there's more likely to be some type of issue that you might hit some of those rocks. So that's sort of where we are right now. We're trying to stay as proactive and ahead of this as much as we possibly can to stave off any forced decision around having to cut allocations to some of our partners.
So when you do run low on food, from what you're explaining to us right now, how does that impact hunger in a state that already historically has faced large hunger issues?
It's devastating. I mean, it could be devastating. We made a big push, and I say we, I'm talking about all 5, because we have 4 regional food banks in the northern part of the state that cover 17 counties. Roadrunner Food Bank covers the remaining 16 counties directly. And the 5 of us together went and advocated for support through the state. And so I have to say, and I have to give kudos to the governor and the governor's office to provide resources for us to purchase product that we might otherwise have gotten through the federal food programs, like the TFAP, which is a USDA program called Temporary Emergency Food Assistance. That is the program that has really dropped in the amount of product coming into the state of New Mexico. So with these resources, the governor has provided in this last legislative session that will be coming available soon, that will give us a little bit of opportunity to get out there and to replenish our inventories. But it's always, you have to think 3 months out, 3 months out, 3 months out. So like I said, we're trying to stay ahead of this issue before it becomes a place where we are forced to make some of those difficult decisions. But this is unlike anything that we've ever seen for the food bank in the state of New Mexico.
Now, does this low shortage of food, rising prices, make you make tough decisions on what types of food you're purchasing?
We're always in that quandary because for us, we know that in many cases, those who are most vulnerable are less likely to have access to healthy food. So we don't want to be a driver to make that problem even worse. So with our distributions, we have always tried to have at least 40 to 50%, say in our mobile distributions, 40 to 50% of that distribution be in the form of fruits and vegetables. So there is a balance of shelf stable along with fresh and nutritious foods so that people have access to healthy foods. But this is putting us to the test as to how we can access and acquire those healthier foods, even in the shelf stable form. We want to make sure we're getting some canned proteins to the level that we do need, legumes, things like that, vegetables that may be canned that can also help people with their nutrition. So it depends on what's out there, how quickly. It's like the housing market, short supply, lots of demand. And so we have to act quickly when we see the opportunity to purchase product so that we can know that we have that in 2 to 3 months ahead, and then can constantly looking to plan outward so that we continue to have not just food, but also food that will be that can nourish people in their most difficult time.
Historically, or just what you see now, does cheaper food equal less nutritious food?
It can. I mean, it could be what they call empty calories, especially when you're raising children, and children being in those formative, really critical years of development, brain development, physical development. We want to make sure that we're not exacerbating already existing issues by putting food into our food stream that is not at the quality that people deserve to have, especially parents wanting to do the best by their children. So it does make it difficult on that front, because we all know that when you go to the grocery store, the least expensive items are probably those that have the least value of nutritious content.
Now, there's been some reporting just about how many young people may be impacted by expiring funding from the federal government with COVID-19 relief. So how is that going to impact getting nutritious food to children?
You know, when you have some of these things that we've had, like the child tax credit or the SNAP, additional SNAP benefits, it creates almost that cliff effect for households where they've been able to make it and hold things together, but then all of a sudden they hit that cliff and things drop off. So that means that the dollars that they are, you know, most people that we serve are working, or they're looking for work, or they're in circumstances or situations where they can't work because of COVID, creating issues around childcare issues, and in some cases parental care, meaning adults having to take care of parents who became sick during the pandemic and haven't quite recovered. So there's a lot of levers and things that are moving right now. So the fewer supports that are available for people means that there's more and more pressure put on the dollars that they are earning to pay rent, to pay utilities. And if we can help provide them the food that they could then pay their rent with, we're all about that. But yes, it makes a hard decision even tougher.
Now, New Mexico is also a state in a region where folks are struggling with underlying conditions. So how does that play a role in this mission that you're trying to address when you're facing rising fuel costs, shortage of relief funds from the federal government? So what are your concerns with this issue?
It is a constant, ongoing concern when you know that you have a multitude of obstacles that you're trying to overcome, and when you do have such a high percentage of people in our state with comorbidities, especially it's become more and more, I think, public knowledge around that is through the pandemic about what consequence that has on people's quality of life and also their ability to thrive or to make it through the pandemic. You also see how even without the pandemic, how that can have an impact on people's abilities to really live a quality and good life. And let's be honest. I mean, some of the biggest concerns through the pandemic really exposed the ability for the medical community within our state to really help not just people who are experiencing day-to-day type of illnesses or having to have certain surgeries, but also how they're able to make sure they were taking care of those individuals in the hospital bed numbers with COVID. So this whole pandemic has exposed a lot of issues around health capacity, and the ability to be able to care for our population. And it was tough enough pre-pandemic, but it has just become even more difficult during it and certainly post-pandemic.
So what works in New Mexico may not work for other states facing food insecurity. What are some of the unique challenges that New Mexico faces?
Well, I think one of the things when you're talking about food, you know, we're in a location that's at the southern part of the country, so it's not in the centers where we're accessible or have access to feeding opportunities or types of foods that you might have in other states. We are also, you know, trying to look at things on the healthy, fresh fruits and vegetables, where we're in a state with severe drought and low water quantities. So the idea of working to solve some of our issues internally are not as possible as it might be in some other parts of this country. And we just we're a state inherent with high poverty rates, and so that just unless those issues are addressed and efforts to stem that tide, things are going to continue to be difficult.
Now there was some data out about food insecurity in New Mexico just right before the pandemic. I'm looking at some of the counties in our region. Luna County over 21%, Sierra County over 20%, Otero and Hidalgo County over 16%. Same for Grant County, Doña Ana County at 15.5%. Now this was before the pandemic in 2019. So what are you seeing right now as somebody who's in this industry and connecting with your partners across the state? What do you think these numbers could be looking at right now?
We know that sadly, pre-pandemic were the good old days, whereas now we know that there are, for a variety of reasons, more individuals and families facing tough situations that are just getting tougher. The ability to be able to provide for your family and maintain a certain level of the quality of types of foods you have access to has declined and diminished. It makes, when we're in a flow now where we'll be getting some statistical data in the very near future to see what cause and effect this has had. But we know that the 1 in 4 children is more likely we'll find out that number is more grave than 1 in 4, and that the 1 in 6 individuals in the state facing food insecurity will be higher as well.
I'd like to talk with you really about another question, and that has to deal with food pantries and the organizations you're working with. What are some of the feedback and information you're getting from your partners across the state about folks who may not be able to get there, or folks who may not know that they're eligible for federal relief programs? Is that an issue in your industry?
It will always be an issue, especially when you're dealing with populations so spread out as the population in New Mexico is, where we have individuals and families in very remote locations that don't have some of the conveniences that others might have, access to internet, access to a local clinic, or have access to going to a state office for WIC, or for even for Human Services Department. There are just a lot of obstacles. Distance being one of those. The lack of technology and connectivity is another huge issue. And I think that combined with that, I think as the state moves forward with trying to provide broader network internet technology, that will help. But it will be just one step. We have just such a big state. It's so many people, so far afield, sometimes from larger metropolitan areas, that is always and always will be. And sometimes there's a language barrier where you have to have younger English-speaking individuals, or those who are more comfortable helping their more elderly family members to navigate through a system that isn't easy to begin with, even if you do speak English or whatever language specifically. So it is a challenge for individuals. And as I know that the SNAP has been extended in this state, but if and when that were to drop back down to pre-COVID levels, what additional stress there'll be on families. And also when you're dealing with, when you don't have internet and you have to go on the phone and try to apply. We have a process at Roadrunner Food Bank you could call and we can give assistance to help people apply for SNAP benefits. And we'll do everything we can to see how we can help move that process along. We work in partnership with the state that way. But it's still, it's not one fix to fix all, but it continues to be a big challenge.
Okay, now, I mean, just knowing if folks are eligible, I mean, is there any demographic specifically that we can point to and say there's a challenge with this specific demographic on knowing that they're eligible for, say, SNAP benefits?
Right. It really is one of those things about getting information out constantly, whatever touch point they might have, working with community health clinics that might be able to say, yes, we're working with your health, but we're also wanting to make sure that the holistic part of your household is attended to as well, and then also helping them understand what the family size and the income levels are. It's a never-ending process of education, so that you can continually get the information out, no matter what, from where. I mean, no matter where. Making sure partners, our partners are 300 plus partner organizations that we work with on a week-to-week basis. Getting that information out into those communities is really important, so they know that, oh wow, yeah, I am eligible. Wow, this would make a big help to me and my family. And then encouraging them to act on it. You could have all the information in the world, but if you don't act on it, you can't get the help you need.
There's been reporting just about on a lot of it on racial disparities with food insecurity. As somebody who works as a leader in the industry, what are you seeing with this? What is the data showing us?
Well, we're in a very interesting, in this state, we're in a very interesting situation because, we are a minority majority state. So I would say that there are a lot of opportunities to get that information across the board to, without regard to the certain box that is people might have to check as far as what their demographic is, but it is always those that have the least access to opportunity, or those that are the last to probably apply for that, and so it depends on different areas. But I would say in the state of New Mexico that across the board, as best as we can, getting that information out regardless of demographics.
Now, when the pandemic first struck and things shut down across the country and impacted the economy, many folks lost jobs during that time and all of a sudden needed food and were food insecure. This happened so fast. What have leaders in your industry learned about the process for folks to be eligible to access food benefits?
I just think it's always being in a state of preparedness. We learned so much about that, and also working with legislators, working on the federal side, making your legislators on the state side realize how important those benefits are flowing through, coming from DC, coming into our state, getting out to community members regardless of where they live. It's just that never-ending responsibility of being prepared, because yes, I don't know if I hope we don't ever experience quite what we experienced in March and April of 2020 when the world somebody turned the lights out and everything had just stopped, so that we can not have that repeat itself, but always knowing too to be prepared, just to be prepared to be as responsive as possible, and to not let the foot off the gas with respect to funding programs that are so essential to many families that will struggle the most.
Just following up on that question. I mean, when this happened, there was a lot of folks that were faced with food insecurity, but there's still a process to go through to fill out forms and
yes,
and get your card, which takes time. So what can policymakers do in the meantime to ensure that something like that doesn't happen, where people are waiting perhaps months to get that card?
Well, ramping up, I know on the state side, ramping up, getting people that are able and ready, trained to take those applications, having but it starts from upstream, having the funds available. Then, but also another thing that can be done that other states have done would be to streamline the application process itself, making SNAP benefits go side by side with other type of benefits that people are already applying for. So there isn't the duplication of what kind of paperwork they have to fill. So there are ways to improve that process and simplify it. It's not that would encourage fraud or anything like that because of the simplification. It's just, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to keep people out or invite people in? We have to really understand and know what we're solving for.
Okay, Mag Strittmatter is President and CEO of Roadrunner Food Bank. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it.
And we want to thank you for joining us for Fronteras, Changing America. I'm Anthony Murnau. We'll see you next time.